Yo guys, what is up? Vintran here, and today I wanted to do a little comparison between the brand new C70 and the 1DX Mark II and see which one will become my new A camera. And I want to do this because a lot of people have been wondering if it's worth getting the C70 or if it's worth getting a used 1DX Mark II since they are significantly cheaper now. And as always, I am not sponsored by Canon, but I genuinely love their products and have invested so much into them. So first off is price. You can get the C70 at $5,500, brand new at B&H, and you can get the 1DX Mark II used for around $2,500 or brand new at $4,500 also on B&H. But personally, I think it's more cost effective to just buy a used 1DX Mark II. But basing solely off of their prices right now, we're gonna have to give a point to the 1DX Mark II. So next is size and weight. The C70 is coming in at 2.58 pounds and the 1DX at about 3.37 pounds. However, the C70 is noticeably more brick-like, whereas the 1DX Mark II has that iconic DSLR style body. Neither of which is bad, but it is something to note. So the point is going to go to the C70 for being lighter and shorter. So the C70 is the first camera to debut the new RF mount on a cinema camera. This is going to be the new lens mount that Canon is going to be producing lenses for going forward. And I personally think it's awesome that they're making more cameras that use this RF mount. But that also means all of my EF glass is going to become relics of time eventually. But for right now, I'm just using an EF to RF adapter, which for what I've seen has not impacted the performance of any of my lenses. And this is going to be a draw points-wise because I actually don't have a preference on which mount is better. Setup time. Both cameras are generally fast in regards to boot up time. In our testing, the 1DX has a millisecond faster time to start up and to be ready to shoot. I think this has something to deal with the fact that the C70 actually has to boot up an internal fan, whereas the 1DX Mark II just has a heatsink inside. So the point is going to go to the 1DX for being faster at being ready to shoot. Alright, so the biggest question is resolution and frame rates. The C70 can shoot at 4K at up to 120 frames per second in 10-bit, and the 1DX Mark II can shoot at 4K 60 frames per second at 8-bit. This is where the C70 shines in my opinion. Having the ability to shoot at higher frames per second and at a higher bit depth means I have more flexibility while editing. Personally, I'm beginning to get way more into color grading, so having 10-bit color depth is way better than 8-bit color depth, since the colors won't become so crushed. I personally don't use 4K 120 frames per second much, but it's nice knowing that I have the ability to. One thing to note is that you can actually go to 180 frames per second on the C70, but you'll have to crop into Super 16 mode. So the point is going to go to the C70. Going along with that is picture profiles. The C70 can shoot C-Log, C-Log 2 and 3, Rec 709, and have custom user profiles. Whereas the 1DX Mark II is a photos first camera, so there isn't much flexibility in terms of picture profiles. So it has the standard picture profiles, which is great, but in certain circumstances, I want to maximize my dynamic range, which you would need C-Log for. Can the camera shoot photos and video? Well, the 1DX Mark II wins right off the bat since the C70 is a purely video camera, so there is no option to shoot photos. It was nice to be able to be shooting video and then quickly switch to photos to get some thumbnails or just some portraits for the client. Both of these feature dual pixel autofocus, which if you remember from my 1DX video, is my favorite autofocus system on the market. The C70 has version 2 of that, which is just better at sticking to the tracked object. But the way you initiate tracking autofocus on the C70 is actually cumbersome in my opinion. You have to press the button, then tap on the object you want to track. Where on the 1DX, I just set it to tracking mode, and wherever I tapped, it tracked. This has actually hurt me in a way because if I accidentally track the wrong object, I have to re-press the button, then re-tap to track. But on the 1DX, I could just re-tap the object to retrack it. So, point to the 1DX. Next is memory type. The C70 uses V60 and V90 type SD cards, and the 1DX uses CF and CFast cards. I personally like CFast cards because of its high-speed recording capabilities, but I know it's not as popular as SD card. Also, the price of CFast cards is way more expensive. Where a set of two 256GB V60 cards is only about $200, the same package for CFast cards is almost $700. And my laptop has a built-in SD card reader, so the point's gonna go to the C70 for having better and more versatile memory type. When it comes to sensor size, on paper, the 1DX Mark II should theoretically win since it has a full-frame sensor, whereas the C70 has a Super 35 sensor. But just like in my 1DX video, it crops in by 1.35 times, making a 20mm actually a 20. But the C70 has a 1.6 times crop factor, so they're not much of a difference. Since I shoot many candid and event style videos, I'm in all types of environments. For from outdoor ceremonies to indoor barns to churches and etc. So are these cameras weatherproof? The C70 is weather resistant and the 1DX Mark II is weather sealed. What's the difference? This means that the 1DX can handle rain as long as the lens that's on it is also weather sealed, but the C70 would not be able to handle that. Once again, this is most likely because of the fan ports exposing the inside of the camera to the elements. So point to the 1DX. And the last thing I want to mention is batteries. The C70 uses BPA30 and BPA60 style batteries, which provide roughly 3 hours and 6 hours respectively. The 1DX uses LPE19 batteries, which also provides around 3 hours in my testing. Of course, record times depend so much on the environment and the temperature, as well as what resolution you're filming in. So I'm gonna call this a tie. There's tons of things great about both of these cameras, but those are the things I considered when making this purchase decision for the C70. This now brings up the question, will the C70 replace my 1DX Mark II as my main camera? To put it simple, oh yeah. I love everything that the C70 offers, and it hasn't let me down so far. I'm still gonna keep the 1DX Mark II around as a B camera since it does shine in certain areas where the C70 doesn't. Weatherproof, easier autofocus, usability, etc. But that's all I have for you today. Let me know if I should do more of these style videos, comparisons, reviews, or whatnot. And as always, if you have any further questions, please let me know.